Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Thursday, June 20th. Derek Van Riper, Saris here with you on this episode. We dig into some recent news. A lot of star players coming back from injuries. A couple guys going down with new injuries, so we'll get into that. Project Prospect, as we have each and every week on Thursday, digging into some prospect-related news and a few names that might be of interest to you in various formats. We're also going to have our weekend waiver wire preview, where it looks like the Guardians might be up to something again,
They're always up to something.
I deserve to be shamed for writing them off, because I watch a team that does it in a similar way on an everyday basis. So for me to be skeptical of the Guardians, of all people, I deserve extra shame.
Well, I mean, there's a lot going on there. We've talked about the ballpark dimensions changing and how it's become more offensive friendly. And I saw a really interesting graphic from @Brooksgate this week that showed the square footage of the field, of like fair ground in each park. And Cleveland was the second smallest.
Surprise. So the smallest was Cincinnati?
I think Fenway.
Fenway's a little smaller. Yeah.
And when I was looking at that and just thinking about park factors, and it's an interesting idea to be known for churning out pitching and then all of a sudden change your park. There's something to this, maybe, that smart teams are making park changes at certain times in their organizational development process. Just think of the Orioles in Mount Baltimore. That seemed like very much like a planned thing. It's like, we've got these guys coming up. This is what we have right now. We don't want Grayson Rodriguez to, have every mistake be blasted. We got some young pitchers coming up, and we want it to be a little bit more pitcher friendly. And like, I don't know. It seemed like it really worked for them. And maybe this Cleveland thing will work similarly.
And some of it, of course, it's simple, like redesign. Let's plan to do this. Other things we've talked about in the past, adjacent construction, making changes to ballpark factors, might not even be in the team's control in some cases. So
right, like in Toronto, was that on purpose for anything how the game played? Because then that doesn't seem to have worked in their favor. Whereas it was probably just a thing that they wanted to do to make more money, because they made them into like little bar spaces, which was something that we lauded before, this
right.
week.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It seems like it seems like a lot like high stakes sort of playing around to like think like you're going to change something about your ballpark to help your team. It really could go either way, I feel like.
I think the Mount Baltimore example makes a lot more sense in the you had a long window of that being a difficult place to pitch, and regardless of what you have as an organizational strength, you don't want your ballpark to feel unfair.
Yeah.
Like, that's probably not a good feeling, because it's going to burn you as much as it's going to help you. That's so like neutralizing it seemed like a good move.
Bringing in the walls and triples alley a little bit, like, yes, they said it was to take the bullpens off the field, and that's a safety issue, and that's a good idea. But also it worked to kind of make it a slightly more fair park.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, I think some of those changes long-term by design, I think if you're tweaking your ballpark every year, which no one's done that, you've gone too far.
That'd be fine. Oh, the walls are going back out. No, they're coming back in.
Just make them like the bleachers, like in high school, where you can just push a few rows back and just set up the wall 5-10 feet further back, depending on who's pitching that day.
Yeah, exactly. Or like if you have like a Davis Schneider that continues to pull the ball, like you have like you put like the Crawford boxes out in there, where you just have like some weird overhang where or can you imagine just like taking the wall and you have this one player that for some reason hits the ball in one place all the time, and you take the wall and like make a little circular cutout that like captures his heat map where the balls are landing. And Tatis hits another double to the Tatis circle.
I feel like that's a future for baseball that I don't quite want.
No, what? I don't know. It'd be wild. It would be so wild. I wonder if the commissioner would step in and be like, you can't cut circles into your outfield wall
Yeah, no Swiss cheese outfield wall. We don't turn it into a carnival out there. We're all about having fun, but that
Yeah,
not too far on the dial. I like
have a park with a flagpole in it.
right. Well, Tal's Hill, and I mean, so the big news in the baseball world was the passing of Willie Mays on Tuesday at the age of 93, and I've seen the catch on the highlight reels for my entire life. As long as I've been watching baseball, the catch comes up, and that game was being played at the Polo Grounds. And you want to talk about ballparks with
Oh my God,
unusual dimensions, and
that's part of why the catch exists, because he was running to, like, I don't know, it was like 500 feet out there.
Almost 500 feet to dead center, like 489, I think is the number they had on it. But when you watch the highlights, the other thing you notice as you start to rewatch it is how quickly Mays gets rid of the ball after making the over-the-shoulder catch. Because what they said about the Polo Grounds was that runners would often tag up from second and score on deep flyouts because it was so far away. And Mays going full speed with his back towards home plate as he makes
knows
the catch.
He has to get it back in.
Fires it back in. The runner on second base also was kind of caught in between, like, hey, is this going to get over his head? Is he going to catch it? You can kind of see when you rewatch it too that there's a little bit of indecision, but regardless, just an amazing play and an amazing life for Willie Mays. There were a lot of great tributes that have come in the last 36 hours, and the facts of his career are just unbelievable. Jason Stark articulated those really well in a piece today, and this is the one that I think just jumps off the page to me. Willie Mays led National League position players in WAR 10 times. He only won 2 MVP awards, but he led position players in WAR 10 times. That is impossible. We'll never see a player do that again.
Yeah, my contention is he's the best player of all time. And and the reason, and I got a little pushback from it, and I just didn't want to engage in an intellectual debate on the passing of somebody, but I do think it's worth making my case, which is that if you look at something like Fangraphs WAR, he's behind a player that played in pre-integration baseball, and it's of no fault of Babe Ruth, but he did not play the best player pool. Like, he did not play the most diverse best player pool with players from all over. And then second place is Barry Bonds. And I don't really have to get into all that for you to know that, like, maybe some of those WAR should be docked from his total. We don't know how much, but and then lastly, even if you just look at the players themselves that are in the top three, Bonds, Ruth, and Mays. Mays is very obviously the best all-around player. Babe Ruth didn't play center field. Barry Bonds moved off of center field. Mays played center field front to back. And maybe our defensive numbers don't capture his defensive brilliance as much as they could. Like, how could they? The defensive stats now aren't amazing. They're even worse the further back you go. So that's my case. And the last little bit that on top of that is he absolutely had the flair and the sort of energized. I mean, people have tried to get at this. Tyler Kepner had a piece about this, about how he just sort of energized baseball, that he was a star. Like, he really was everything. I mean, he was the highlight reel on the base pass, hitting, fielding, just everything. I mean, just think that, like, he had a play that we call the catch. You know what I mean? Like, that's amazing. Like, we know what you're talking about. It's like, does anybody have the hit?
I think the closest thing to it is Babe Ruth calling a shot, right? Those are the two plays in baseball history that they're just right there. They're the plays. There's those two, and there are thousands of great moments in baseball history, but those two, they just rise above to the top of baseball lore.
I think also Michael Salfino was talking about Willie Mays's one year he had like a 10 WAR year, and the Giants won the World Series. Maybe that's 54. Yeah, I think it was 54. And there's where are they? So the Giants won the World Series in 54. And the best other player on this team was Hank Thompson, who was like a 4-win player, Alvin Dark, and then Don Mueller, and like low replacement guys. So basically, he put that team on his back and was the player on this team. And this was during a time when, I think it was the Yankees winning a lot, right? So that's kind of, Salfino's point was like, that's like the MVP of MVPs. Like, the way that we think of value and like winning and stuff, like he was the best player in the league and also on his team, and so much better than everybody else on his team that he was just like, here, I'll win it for us, and they won it all, so it's like, Willie Mays is just, he was great. And then locally, really cool personality. There's this weird thing where apparently he was a greeter at Bally's, he was like involved with casinos. Like that's what some of what he did after he played was he was paid by casinos to sort of hang out. And because he was paid by casinos, baseball didn't let him back in or something. He was like 10 years. He wasn't really supposed to be, around baseball, because he was dealing with casinos.
Well, in the face of what's happening currently.
Right. So he was let back in.
Yeah,
he was let back in once that was softened. And thank God, because he was around a lot at San Francisco Giants games and just super cool. Like he would give little speeches and, he would like, be on the field a bunch. He just seemed like a really nice man, a really engaging, cool dude. And he represented the Giants, even as he was older, and Barry Bonds was his grandson. Like it was kind of like the lifeblood of the Giants,
Yeah, such an icon, an American icon, and lost just a couple of days before the game at Rickwood Field in Birmingham too, which was just, it's going to change. It's going to change the tone of what we see Thursday night in Birmingham. It's going to be a night where the memories of Willie Mays kind of take over, and understandably so. But it's just larger than life, I think, is the way I think you would describe Willie Mays, and a player that I wish I could have seen play, and a person I just wish I could have met and had one conversation with, because I think everybody that had that opportunity seems better for it, happier for it, more joyful for it. And obviously someone that has had an influence in American history that is basically unmatched in. We're not going to see a player have an impact on the game like this again. It's not going to happen. It's just different times, different era. Moving on to the usual types of things we talk about on this show. It's not all bad. See, the good news here is not just players getting hurt. It's some players coming back. Gerrit Cole's back. That's a good thing, right? We're happy to have Gerrit Cole back.
All the way back.
He wasn't all the way back in terms of workload.
He wasn't all the way back in terms
Ks.
of fastball velo, 94.7 after he was 96.8 last year.
Where do you draw the line in terms of it being a problem? Like, is it 3 starts, 5 starts? Given what we know about Gerrit Cole, age, all the factors, like when would you be really alarmed? I mean, you seem somewhat concerned already, but when is it really a problem?
I would say 3 starts is a good number, because according to Jeff Zimmerman's research, 3 starts actually predicts rest of season fastball velocity like almost perfectly. Like it's all signal almost at that point. And so that's the safest way to go about it. I would say that despite his velo being down, he's always had good ride on his fastball, good shapes. He had a 107 stuff plus. And there is a chance that he's so good that even with a diminished fastball, he's still good. But I think if I had to guess like how he would perform if his velocity stayed where it is that I would guess that he would kind of return to those years where he had the higher home run rates, and so we might see even a season like 2022 with a 3.50 ERA and a 1.5 homers per nine. Maybe a little bit reduced strikeout rate. So maybe like a 3.75 ERA. Like no matter what, I think he'll be good. The question is, will he be the man? And I'm not sure he will be at 94.7.
At 94.7, it changes, a lot about the ceiling, but he also wouldn't be bad at 94.7.
That's sort of what I'm saying. Yeah.
You change up a lot of what you do. I think if you lose that much velocity, if that's how this unfolds for Gerrit Cole, I think
like he threw 21% cutters. Like that's part of the story.
Yeah. And again, 62 pitches. So they kind of brought him back a little early just to get him going, get those innings in their rotation instead of having him make another rehab start or two. So I think as long as he bounces back physically, he's feeling good coming off this start, even though the velocity is down, it's a smaller amount of panic for me than it would ordinarily be given the circumstances.
Yeah,
given my trust in the secondaries.
I agree.
Speaking of Yankees news, though, Aaron Judge was not in the lineup Wednesday after getting hit by a pitch in the hand. Good news, I think, was that the X-rays and CT scans Tuesday night after he got hit by a pitch were negative, so probably not more than a day-to-day situation unless something's changed.
It's like that's the scariest play in baseball for me. If he's like on your teams, or if he's on the team you root for, or just generally the ball that's like coming up on them towards the hands, I'm just like, oh God, here comes a broken hand.
I mean, we just saw it with Mookie Betts, right? It's millimeters sometimes of the difference between a major fracture and something that's painful, but not going to cost you more than a couple of games. And it looks like Judge fits more into that latter group where it's not going to cost
Arenado escaped injury.
Yeah, he's supposed to be back Saturday.
Part of why I think he went down so bad was I'm pretty sure that ball hit him in the elbow and then hit him in the nuts.
Oh, the double.
If you watch the video, it like hits him in the elbow and then it goes straight down to his crotch and then he crumples in a heap and everyone's like, oh, his arm's broken. And I was like, when they watch the replay, you're like, oh, maybe it's not his arm that's hurting right now.
It's both, but yeah, one of those things dropped him to the ground, and one of those things will cost him a couple games at the end of the week, right? That's the difference.
But he says he expects to return on Saturday, and I mean, I don't know if that's good news. I've detailed that I don't think he's going to get back to where he once was, but
still a little bit light in terms of power output. Popped 4 homers in May and 23 games, has 1 so far in 17 games in June. Yeah, it doesn't seem like he's comfortable. That's the main takeaway. I don't know if it's the back or if it's timing or if it's a combination of factors or it's something that we just don't know about yet with Nolan Arenado, but he does not have the obvious bounce back feel to him right now.
A reduction in bat speed. I mean, the nice thing about knowing that maximum exit velocity is the thing that is closest, the closest tied to bat speed that we know among the different outcome metrics, gives you a nice little one look at like, I can compare Nolan Arenado's bat speed to his previous ones just by looking at his max EV, and he's got the worst max EV of his career. We also know from some of the aging curves on bat speed that it does go down pretty precipitously in your mid 30s. So the Kyle Bradish news was really sad. But I do think that it was headed towards that. I mean, I just think that like if you have a spring injury for a guy, then they say like he has a small tear or he sprained his elbow. A sprain is a tear. So like, if you hear the words sprain and elbow, if they're not getting Tommy John right away, they're going to get it sometime in the future soon. And I think that was sort of how I read the Kyle Bradish situation as soon as he went down in the beginning. And I was happy to see him pitch a little bit, but I never thought he was going to make it through the season.
I was Definitely concerned. I like that they at least tried to go the rest in PRP route, and unfortunately, this turned out in a surgery. But with Bradish, it was Tommy John with internal brace, according to Daniel Allentuck from the Baltimore Banner.
They're kind of just combining them now.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're going to have to keep an eye on how these are reported. And I wonder if that's going to be the more normal or more common way to go. And I also wonder if that will either prolong the previously dubbed Tommy John honeymoon period. Will we go from 4 to 5 years?
Or will
to
it reduce
8?
The recovery time problems by 2 months or whatever?
Yeah, and I think Mike Elias was quoted as saying he expects Bradish to still be down for 12 to 18 months. So it's not speeding it up if it's both, but if it increases the longevity,
a wide range, though.
Yeah,
it could. If it was 12, that'd be actually better than most Tommy Johns, most traditional Tommy Johns. So you could still be right that it could shave time off, and it could be 12 months. 14 months, I think, is about sort of your average for the old style of Tommy John. 18 would be a bad outcome.
I mean, I would just.
But he'd miss all of next year, right?
Yeah, he'd miss all of next year if it's 18. I would settle for better long-term outcomes, even if it didn't speed up recovery time. And I realize the goal is to have both of those things, get players back healthy faster and keep them healthy in the long run. I'm hoping that the combination of the replacement with the brace ends up being a better version of Tommy John surgery, if you will, where we end up with guys that are not breaking a second or even a third time, which has become more of a concern in recent years. The news on Mike Trout is disappointing. Sam Blum from The Athletic had a report that there's still not really a timeline and things are going more slowly than expected. So,
what was the injury? A calf tear or
meniscus?
No,
meniscus surgery.
Yeah.
He has not started a running program yet and still looking for exercises that allow him to progress with minimal soreness. And there was uncertainty about the timetable. Basically, at the time, it was more like, he should be back this year. That was the general thinking. And a lot of times meniscus surgeries can be 6 to 8 week injuries, but it really depends on what else is going on. In Trout's case, I have been in a situation with no IL spots where holding on to Mike Trout made sense, thinking about 6 to 8 weeks and looking at how well he was playing when he got hurt. Now I'm starting to have some reservations about grinding it out in the absence of IL spots. Yeah, because it might just be the longer end of normal. Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna hold on to Mookie Betts in main event, I think, and that's a 6-week timeline.
6 to 8. Yep. That's for the guys that are early rounders. 6 to 8 weeks is usually the timetable I see and say, all right, I'm going to grind out this next stretch without a player.
He's just so good when he's in, Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if Trout. Trout wasn't really a first 2-rounder anyway. So
right, you got a Trout discount this year, and I think for some people that was enough to say, yeah, I want to keep him, but I can't.
Mm-hmm. It's a tough decision.
Yeah, but I think this update, if you were on the fence about it, might be enough for you to say, all right, I'll take my chances. I'll drop him, maybe try to get him back in fab once we get some positive updates, once we get some progress toward a return, just given the way things have trended so far for Mike Trout. Max Scherzer's coming back. See, I told you there'd be a couple players coming back. Scherzer's going to start on Saturday against the Royals. We didn't get any model numbers from his rehab starts, did we? I know one of those starts at least was a couple of those starts were at AAA. So I thought maybe we'd get some numbers on that. Royals have been a little bit of a tough draw too, so it's not an immediate must activate in all situations.
Ooh, I got 105 pitches with a 78 stuff plus.
I mean, it's hard to, in the rehab sense. We talked about this with Walker Buehler.
Is he throwing as hard as
he airing it out, or is he just getting through it to get the work done to prepare himself? I tend to think veterans like Scherzer know what they're doing with arm care and know how to just get back, and that's more where his focus is.
Yeah. I wouldn't sound the alarms until I saw, Major League radar gun readings, and And in fact, one of the things that was this separates sort of, late career Scherzer from, the excellent Scherzer was command of the breaking balls, which he couldn't really do with the back. And now that he has like 5 breaking balls, that's going to be something to watch for. But you got to watch him on your bench. There's no way you just leave him on the waiver wire unless he wasn't in your player pool, and you have to wait. Then you have to wait for him to pitch anyway on Saturday before you do Sunday Fab. So
Scherzer is 77% rostered right now in the RotoWire Online Championship, 100% rostered in the main event. Makes sense. But in leagues where he's available, so 1 in 4 leagues roughly where he's out there, I think you would bid on Scherzer similar to a top pitching prospect. Like, even if he doesn't pitch well, as long as things look pretty good, you'd say, hey, this is probably better than most of the other pitchers that were taking chances out on the waiver wire on a weekly basis.
Yeah, he's probably worth $150, $200 out of 1,000.
Yeah. So I think you'll see some pretty aggressive bids in those leagues. I know those are kind of unique circumstances where Scherzer's out there, but he is out there in a few places.
What do you think? Do you think the Rangers should sell?
I think the beauty of our calendar, as we talked about on Tuesdays, we have time. We still have a month and change, right? I mean, if you had to decide today, I think you might have 11%
chance of making the playoffs today.
Yeah, like if the trade deadline was tomorrow, I think you'd still consider playing it out because Scherzer's coming back now. DeGrom could come back later. Tyler Mahle could be back.
Yeah.
You've had Wyatt Langford injured and trying to adjust to big league pitching. You've had a stretch where Josh Young has barely been able to play because he's been hurt. Evan Carter's been hurt. Seager's missed time. So you've weathered more than a normal share of injuries. And I think you could still look at the Rangers and say, yeah, they're about as good as they were last year. Maybe they're even going to be better once they get everybody healthy.
The Verlander news was annoying to me because I wasn't able to change my lineups in time. It sort of came down at a weird time of the day. And I should have known, because it was like, his neck hurts. He might make his next start. He's probably going to make his next start. Oh, he's on the IL.
I always find the neck strain, the neck discomfort, those types of seemingly minor injuries to be challenging because a lot of times I feel like it's literally as simple as someone sleeping wrong and just being too tight to go out and make their start. And by the time the next turn rolls around, they're okay.
Yeah.
But it can be really bad.
I thought it was. It can be really bad. I mean, basically Turnbull's season last year was all neck problems.
Right. And Verlander kind of looks like a slightly better version of the guy he was last year, even though the ERA is a little higher. Has a bit of a home run problem, though. 11 homers in 57 innings so far through 10 starts this season. Last couple turns against the Angels and Cardinals, only 5 innings, 4 earned allowed in both of those. So, yeah, it's hard to know. Like, is this the new Verlander? This version, the 41-year-old version of Verlander, still good, still rosterable, still usable, but now dealing with more of these nagging injuries and less dominant, just more of your third or fourth best starting pitcher when he's out there.
Yeah, I think so. I think the contract it's up this year. He has a player option for next year. I think he uses that one, but I'm not sure how many more years. I mean, could be 1 or 2 more years.
Yeah, he's 41.
41, yeah.
He's also at the point in his life where he's made more than enough money. He could just say, actually, my neck, my arm, whatever doesn't feel good.
And if the Astros aren't playing that well,
then I'm just going to hang it up. He's made enough money where he doesn't have to exercise that option. He could very comfortably retire and would be no worse off for it. But
right.
I would love to see him pitch another year if it's something he's able to do. And hopefully it's only a short-term stint on the IL for Verlander. But we've talked about this Astros rotation depth a few times. It's been tested and tested again. The good news around all of this is that Hunter Brown has really got back on track lately. He's looked much more like the guy we hoped he'd be coming into the season. If you go back through, I think, May 22nd, his last 6 starts or so, basically the last month on a rolling basis, a 41-8 strikeout to walk ratio, 170 ERA, 0.89 whip. He's not walking guys. He's cut down on the home run problems. It really seems like Hunter Brown has made the adjustments, and that's been huge for the Astros.
Yeah, I think that his cutter is kind of a hard slider, more than a cut fastball, and that means that he was kind of a one fastball guy, and he didn't have great command of that one fastball. What you see is he really turned it on and became a better pitcher when he threw the sinker in there. And I think it just means like multiple looks from the hard pitches and the soft pitches. All of the pitches were decent. It was a matter of putting together in the right way. And I think he's doing that right now. And this is the Hunter Brown that I believe in.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Now, the name that actually kind of gets us into Project Prospect today, Jake Bloss, is coming up from the minors to take over a spot in the rotation. A new name in the mix, really good numbers. Jake Bloss started the season with a handful of starts, 4 starts at high A. He's been pitching at double A, getting great results by ratios. Strikeout rates come down a little bit with the promotion. That's not a huge surprise, but he's actually a bit of a prospect, someone that might be a tad underrated. Fangraphs got some nice scouting grades on his arsenal overall. At 55 fastball, 60 slider, 55 curve, 45 change, and even 40 command, which for someone that started the year at high A is pretty good. I don't know if it's all going to fall into place right away, but we're talking about a guy who was a 3rd-round pick just last year, getting pushed up into the big leagues a lot faster than expected as a result of these injuries, but someone that might be worth thinking about stashing in longer-term leagues, especially. You play in keeper dynasty leagues, auto new situations where you need future pitching. Even if Bloss is just temporarily here to cover for Verlander, he could be a bigger part of the plan next season, given their organizational needs.
Yeah, in the write-up from Longenhagen says something that's kind of interesting to me, that Bloss has different shapes on his different pitches. And I do think there's a philosophical question there where you're defining pitches and you don't know if you should call that one pitch or two pitch. And like, what will that do to the Stuff Plus numbers, as it aggregates them? Some pitch models out there do their own pitch classifications for this reason. Not necessarily that it would make a big difference in the actual class, in like the Stuff Plus classification on the per pitch level. But when you sum it all up, you might be missing the picture, right? He might have, if he has 2 curveballs, and Eric Longenhagen says he's basically 2 curveballs and 2 sliders. And you're saying he has 1 slider, 1 curveball. But if you split it up, you see, one of these is much better than the other. There's actually 2 curveballs in there. One's much better than the other. At least as a pitching coach, it'd be easy to be like, hey, stop throwing that other one. You know what I mean? Or it might be harder to face him as a hitter because you say he has a slider and a curve. And then you get up there and you're like, but that curve was totally different than the other curve. That was something that Seth Lugo said in our long conversation this week, was he has 2 arm slots, Seth Lugo. And so he throws all of his pitches from each arm slot, and they're different from each arm slot. So not only does he have 8 pitches, he almost has 16 pitches.
I like this. I like this idea. I like this approach because it's like being your own reliever in some ways. Like, hey, first time to the order, you got me up here. Second time to the order, you got me down a little bit lower. Oh, and everything you thought you saw is actually going to be a little bit different. It's like
more
trying to hit in a fun house. Like it'd be awful. Be really hard to hit in those situations.
Bloss, the only thing that bothers me about Bloss specifically, though, statistically, is these high strikeout rate numbers in the low minors, and then he gets to double A and it's 21% all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's a big dip.
I don't know. I don't know that I am rushing to get him. And even even though Longenhagen was into him, he put him 99th overall in the top 100. So he's barely a top prospect. But
it's less than a year to being drafted, right? Like, he hasn't had a lot of time to move up. So I think that's kind of that's kind of an opportunity. But it's just like, well, let's see what he does. Tough debut. He's got the Orioles first time out. Nice challenge right away. So we'll get a look at him before the weekend. But if you're like seeing names that are unfamiliar on the waiver wire, Jake Bloss is probably one of them in most cases. And there might be a little something there. I mean, Spencer Arrighetti has struggled. The door is open if he pitches well. There is a spot available even after Verlander returns if Jake Bloss pitches well.
And there's a chance that his fastball is better than Arrighetti's. Arrighetti had a 72 stuff plus on the fastball. I think that's part of why he's up and down with results. He does have really good breaking balls, but Bloss is supposedly 93 to 96 with great carry. So if he does have good IVB, he just has good shape on that fastball, then he could leapfrog Arrighetti pretty quickly.
Other prospect-related news, more from the stashing horizon and redraft purposes, because Jordan Lawlar is rostered in every keeper and dynasty league imaginable. 4 to 6 weeks with a hamstring strain is the timetable for Jordan Lawlar. Just another setback for him physically. I believe he was playing a little bit of third base in between IL stints, so they're trying to figure out a way to get him into the mix. I wonder if we're going to see the Jordan Lawlar timeline line up with what the Diamondbacks did with Corbin Carroll when Carroll debuted a couple of years back. If it's like a late August sort of promotion and Lawlar gets that window to really establish himself at the end of this season and possibly go into 2025 as a fixture in that lineup, health permitting.
Yeah, they're obviously itching to do something different at third base. They're putting Blaze Alexander there against lefties. So they're already doing a platoon there. Suarez is just it could be near the end. And so, that would be he's 32 and he is projected to bounce back from a 75 WRC plus, but those projections at 32 start to become less reliable. His bat speed is down as evidenced by his max EV. His barrel rate is half of what it has been in the past. And his hard hit rate is the lowest it's been since 2017. So I don't know how much me as a fantasy player I'm waiting around for it. And then to see that the team is already doing things with Blaze Alexander and taking time away from him suggests, and then Lawler's taking. So I think, I don't know who's going to win it, but I think somebody other than Suarez is going to be the second half third baseman.
Yeah, I think Suarez has about as much time as Lawlar is hurt to try and claw his way back, but those underlying power drop-offs there are very concerning. That was his carrying tool recently, was being able to just barrel up the ball to 12, 13, 14% rate and get to that power, and that just has not been the case for Suarez so far this year. Hurston Waldrop hit the IL on Monday, had another rough start against the Rays on Sunday, and it sounds like he'll be optioned to AAA once he's healthy. Good news, just inflammation for now, nothing structurally showing up for Waldrop, but it has not gone the way I had hoped for Waldrop in these first couple big league starts.
He's a near identical statistical match in terms of pitch movements to Keaton Winn. So I would treat him as I do Keaton Winn, which is, I'm excited, somewhat excited to pick him up for good matchups. I would like to have him today. I think he might pitch well today. What I have learned actually about Rickwood is that it's very large, and big it's park. Actually a pitcher's park. One thing that is weird about it, though, if you've seen the pictures, like the seats behind home plate, some of them are pointing down the lines.
Oh, they're angled. The seats are angled.
Yeah, it's there's very little home plate where you're sitting like straight to the home plate. There's a lot of this diagonally sort of sitting behind. So that was a little bit jarring for me to see that, but that has nothing to do with anything. Keaton Winn, Hurston Waldrop, put them in the same part of your brain and treat them similarly, which is to say, nice when you got them.
And probably time to go ahead and give Spencer Schwellenbach that little upgrade.
We talked about him before. Yes, give him the love. He has a good fastball, good slider. He has other pitches he's learning how to mix in. I like Spencer Schwellenbach. I picked him up in my 12-teamer even.
Yeah, 7 Ks, just 1 earned run, 6 innings last time out on Tuesday against the Tigers. So hopefully Schwellenbach can take the opportunity and run with it in the Atlanta rotation. Dylan Cruz got bumped up to AAA earlier this week. Did a lot better this time around at AA. He finished that level last year. It was just 20 games. Didn't go particularly well. Some people were a little impatient because they thought Dylan Cruz right out of LSU was just going to be almost ready to go in the big leagues. Already at AAA, though, less than a year after being drafted, things are still going pretty well overall. We've seen some power. We've seen a lot more speed. Interesting, though, he's now teammates with James Wood at Rochester. They're playing Cruz in center field, James Wood playing in left. So looks like that's the arrangement for now.
I don't think it's all good news because, a 121 WRC plus from a 22-year-old AA, I don't think you adjust that very much. And it's not sort of outstanding. It's just like sort of above average. And then the thing that really bothers me is he had a 27% pull rate this year in AA. Dylan Cruz did, and like a 27% pull rate is nobody's doing that in the big leagues. At least nobody with power. Let me find the smallest pull rate this year. Yandy Diaz. I mean, is he going to be a Yandy Diaz? Bryce Turang, Bo Bichette, Brendan Rodgers, Leody Taveras, Blake Perkins, Luis Garcia Jr. Am I talking about power hitters here? I
don't think he's like those players, but my reasoning is trusting what other people have observed about him. I mean, 60 raw power.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's something about Harrisburg. Even James Wood last year, there was plenty of power from James Wood. 18 homers in 87 games, younger for the level. But the offensive performance was down compared to expectations, even though it was a big bump up age to level for Wood. And of course, we've seen what he's done at AAA this year. So I just want to see what happens at AAA. Give me 40 or 50 games at AAA from Dylan Cruz. And if something looks off there, maybe then I'll start to dial back expectations a little bit.
He's definitely playing with that contact point with the pull versus push. I mean, in AA in 2023, he had a 54% pull rate. And of course he had a terrible time. But it may not be, it's not in stone. A 27% pull rate is not in stone. That's not necessarily who he is, but he was an all fields guy with oppo power in college. So it's just something that bothers me a little bit. When you're very oppo, you're just sapping your power to some extent. And that's why I'm more, I'm like everybody else. This is a super hot take. I like James Wood better than Dylan Cruz.
Yeah, but I think you can like James Wood better than Dylan Cruz and still like Dylan Cruz too. Like it's possible.
It's just weird to like, okay, so he comes out of college and everyone says he's got 60 power and 60, eye at the plate. And, this year he hits 5 home runs at AA with a 7.6% walk rate and a 27% pull rate. And I'm kind of like, why isn't it showing up?
I understand. I understand where the concerns come from. Just float it out there. There might be something else going on in Harrisburg. Some promotion news here. Orelvis Martinez is up for the Blue Jays. Hasn't played yet. He's been up since Tuesday. Hit 16 homers in 63 games at Buffalo. Still just 22 years old. Feels like he's been around forever because he was on the radar as a big international signing, 4 or 5 years ago now. But he's shortstop eligible, more likely to fit in at second base in the long run. I'm thinking it's because they're not really playing him in the middle of the week that he's more of a up and down guy in the short term, even though longer term, there could be an opportunity there. They're playing Barger. They're playing Spencer Horwitz. It seems like Orelvis Martinez may have to wait just a little bit longer to get that opportunity with the Jays.
Yeah, that's 3 starts, 4 games. No, Barger hasn't played at short yet.
Yeah, Barger's playing third and right.
Who's playing short?
Bo was hurt, and then they're probably playing Kiner Falefa at short right now, right?
That's it. I mean, look at Kiner.
Yeah, they're definitely playing Kiner Falefa at short because the SS was tacked on to his last name because his last name's a little bit long, and people were making jokes about that on Twitter.
Here we go. Yes. IKF has played 5 straight games at shortstop, so he seems to be the option. I mean, I guess the idea for the Blue Jays is that they are scratching and clawing, and they're not necessarily in the turn it over to the kids portion of the schedule yet.
No, but I do like they're giving Barger and Horwitz the chance that we talked about before, instead of running the same veterans up and down in the lineup the way they had been for a little while. It's at least a mild shakeup, trying to find something that works. Here's one that might be of interest in some deeper leagues. If you noticed, Sebastian Walcott, one of the top prospects in the Rangers organization, was not doing a ton to begin the season. There's some context here. He's very young. He's 18. He was assigned to High A, which is a very aggressive promotion. Things have been much better for him in June. You can still look at that overall slash line and say, oh, why are we excited about a guy that's hitting 234 with a 342, 380 at High A right now? It's because he's 18 and he's getting better month by month. Kenny Landry from MLB.com had a quote from Ross Fenstermaker. You might remember that name because Ross was kind enough to join us during the winter meetings on the show. And Ross said that Walcott has the mental capacity and ability to acclimate to the level and grow and progress. He's done exactly that. Every month has been better than the last. And they've been playing him a little bit at third base too. So playing both spots on the left side of the infield. So Walcott's one of those players that if you're in a rebuilding situation in a keeper league and you want to take a chance on someone that could just take off and vault up prospect lists if it all clips, he meets that kind of description.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. Where was he drafted? Why don't
Walcott?
The new Fangraphs player pages don't have the where he was drafted at the top.
International free agent signing, it would have been, I think, before 2023, because he was playing in the Dominican Summer League that year. So it would have probably been like the winter before that. Yeah,
the K issues, that's what I'd probably be watching the most. Even the scouting report says, the power's there, the defense is there. It's all about, can he make contact? So getting that swing strike rate down to 12%, that's manageable. It was higher than that before. I was tooling around on some of the pages, looking for fun guys at different levels, and one thing was that like Roman Anthony is just jumping up the boards in Double A. He has come to, as a 20-year-old, he's 45% better than league average in Double A. So. The last update we have is a 15 overall ranking from Fangraphs. And, you've heard about Roman Anthony here, for a while. So I was like, kind of trying to find the next Roman Anthony. And I've forgotten his name. I told you it earlier.
You've had him, and you've read Josue DePaula.
Oh, Josue DePaula, but the time is up on that one too. Like you're gonna get to you're gonna run out of time on DePaula too. And one thing that we got in the news was that it was 114 exit velo. That's something that Longenhagen was reporting, max exit velo. And I looked at the major leaguers that have hit the ball 114 or more this year, and the worst one was Jorge Soler. DePaula has speed though too. He's not necessarily a Soler player, but if he turned out to be like a Soler with speed, you have to remember how many good seasons Soler had for fantasy. That would be a pretty good outcome. So I think DePaula is already almost not a great pick for the next Roman Anthony, because I think Keith Law had him 11th. Mm-hmm. So then I was trying to go further down. Didn't I have one more name for you?
Let's see. You threw at me. You didn't say Felnin Celestin, but he's in the Mariners organization. He's a big riser, the lower levels.
Yeah,
I'm forgetting the name too. Who did you throw
at me?
About
Luke Keeschel. I think that he's now in Double A and he's raking still. I think he's going to jump up on the list. And I did mention Carson Williams has cut some of the strikeouts. So those are, Carson Williams is a shortstop in the Rays organization, and I think that Caballero and Walls is probably where they'll go the rest of the season. They've been fine. They're good enough, close enough to league average. But I don't think that Caballero has hit a second level. And so I think shortstop is still an area of concern for them organizationally going forward. Like they would like to find a better player probably than someone they just sort of picked up and put in there that can be close to league average. And Carson Williams might still be that guy.
Yeah, Carson Williams has more of a star ceiling. I think you could imagine a scenario in the not so distant future where a combination of Carson Williams and Junior Caminero are holding down the spots on the left side of that infield in Tampa Bay. And that would change a lot about that Rays lineup very quickly once those guys are up. But I think Caballero, to me, just looks like a nice bench player, just a guy you'd have as a capable option between mostly second and short. It's fine. It's got speed. K rate's a little high this year, too. I wonder if that's part of just having that larger role and not necessarily being spot started as effectively as he was a year ago in Seattle. Like if that's part of the downside of playing him more, is that you're going to get more swing and miss.
Yeah. I also just don't know, the Rays weren't playing him at short, despite, JP Crawford's numbers not being great at short defensively. So I wonder if they think he's internally the best defensive option at short. I mean, why is Taylor Walls coming on and taking time away from him? It's not necessarily from an offensive standpoint, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either. But I actually thought Walls at one point had more ceiling than he's shown so far.
At least in the power department, for sure.
Yeah, that's. I guess maybe a slightly higher OBP. We've seen consistent ability to draw walks, even though it's been.
That's about it.
Yeah, it's mostly that. It's like that buoys things quite a bit for him. If he could hit a little more on top of drawing those walks, then we might have a passable regular at short. But I think versatility with the glove is a big part of why Taylor Walls continues to hang around when healthy as a part of that Rays playing time mix. Let's move over to the weekend waiver preview, which will still have a few more prospecty names in it. But how about Daniel Schneeman? Another surprise in Cleveland, as I sort of hinted at earlier, a guy that was not on the radar at all for me and has started 5 consecutive games throughout this week. Going to go back to the weekend. He's playing all over the place. Schneeman has played just in the last 5 days. He's made starts in center field, third base, and shortstop. And prior to that, has made starts for the Guardians in right field and second base. So very versatile, is hitting the ball harder than he did last year. And we're using Fangraph's hard hit rate. Just look at the difference between his numbers at Columbus a year ago versus numbers now. He's already 27 years old. So is he a prospect sense? The answer is kind of, well, no. He's been in the organization since 2018, and this is his first opportunity. But there's power, there's speed, there's decent contact rates. There seems to be a pretty good handle on the zone. I almost wonder, is Daniel Schneeman this year's Davis Schneider?
Schneeman Schneider.
Same initials. I don't know, but I just the age to level stuff is like, okay, not a prospect, but good enough to play and versatile enough to find his way into the lineup.
Well, they're different in that, Schneider is trying to pull everything in the air. And Schneeman's more of a balanced hitter, which I like. I guess that's sort of the Guardians' way is an emphasis on contact. He has a 110.6 max EV in AAA. Schneeman does with a 49% hard hit. Like I think it's so hard with these Cleveland guys, man. The answer for me is the same on almost every Cleveland guy that's not named Josh Naylor or David Fry. I guess is I don't know how much power they have.
I just love that David Fry has already elevated himself to that level. I mean, Jose.
Yeah. I mean, he just like he has better batted ball stats than everybody else. I mean, this is the team with mediocre batted ball stats that still somehow is hitting homers this year.
It's a great mystery, and I'm coming around to just not questioning it. I want to understand how it's happening, and I'm not doubting it.
Boring.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see, especially this weekend, is 15-team leagues are where Schneeman's going to get scooped up, right? He's already rostered in 26% of main event leagues. That number is going to go up. He's going to add position eligibility at a few spots in the next couple of weeks if they keep playing him and moving him around as much as they do. That always carries value. And because the underlying metrics are actually pretty solid, you can tell yourself a story that, hey, he's stolen bases at AAA before. He was 17 for 20 last year, so he could run a little bit. He unlocked some more power this year, so maybe he'll actually be a nice balanced player for us that is decent in all 5 categories. Those players are actually pretty hard to come by, and because of his OBP skills, maybe he actually has a prominent spot in the better than expected Cleveland lineup. You could tell yourself a whole bunch of stories that this could actually work out.
To me, the big story here is that it's possible that Tyler Freeman is a drop. I still like the combination of swing strike rate, K rate, barrel rate. Like I think it should be better than it is. And my biases align with the Bat X, and the Bat X likes Tyler Freeman the best out of all of them, and says he can be a 271 hitter with a 330 OBP, 407 slugging. The kind of guy that would put up 13, 14 homers and 18 homers and 18 stolen bases over the course of a full season. But you have Schneeman, and then you look at the games log for Tyler Freeman and you realize he's missing games. Tyler Freeman's not starting every day. And if Tyler Freeman's not starting every day, again, sometimes the team in their usage is going to tell you more about how good a player is or how invested you should be in them. And so the fact that the Guardians are playing Schneeman so much, 5 straight starts, and not playing Freeman tells me also that Freeman may be a drop.
Yeah, I think that's a good breakdown of where things stand. They're both versatile enough where if they're both hitting, there's a world in which they both play, but that's been the adjustment so far. A little less time for Freeman has been part of how they fit Daniel Schneeman into the mix. Other bats to consider. I'll leave this one a little bit open. I'm sure people want us to talk a little more about Ben Rice, who's getting the first crack at filling in for Anthony Rizzo. And part of the appeal is that Ben Rice has catcher eligibility in a lot of leagues. So you're getting someone that could be a second catcher who's playing more than a second catcher typically does, and someone who's interesting by profile, but also could actually be in a elite lineup for the time that he's playing. So you get that extra bump. Like, I think the hard thing this time of year is to say, what separates these guys that all have very similar, modest projections, but they seem to project enough to play at least in a 15-team league, possibly in a 12-team league? It's supporting cast. I think that can be the difference between a 12-team player and a 15-team player when skills might be otherwise equal.
Yeah, and also what kind of a park are we uploading them into? It's like if Ben Rice was called up to start for the Marlins at first base, I might be a little bit less excited about him. So. There's supporting cast, and then if you can get it, just like I've been harping on this episode, is how often they play him. But it looks like he's just going to slot in for Rizzo.
2 for 2 so far, at least. So we'll keep an eye on that leading into the weekend. But yeah, Ben Rice getting picked up in first come, first serve leagues for good reasons. I mean, we talked about him, I think, when the Rizzo injury happened. Like, the production in the minors was very interesting. He's putting up some nice power speed numbers between AA, the very brief time he was at AAA, getting on base, doing all the things you got to do to possibly win a job, at least temporarily, even on a good team. Tyler Black is back for the Brewers. I don't know if you should do anything with him. I think you got to see they have a 4-game series in San Diego starting Thursday. Watch the lineup for the next few days. See if they make a change. Jake Bauers still looks like the same guy he was last year. Jake Bauers looks like the same guy he was last time we talked about him. Last time we talked about him, we said, how could you possibly make this decision? Bauers got hot for a couple of weeks, then cooled right back off. It's a 93 WRC plus. It's a 33% K rate. I think what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
There's power, there's speed, there's swing and miss. If the Brewers think they can do better with Tyler Black, then they'll play him more. And I think we'll get just a little hint of that in this series against the Padres. So if they play him 4 straight games, I'm in on Sunday. If they play him twice, I'm probably out. If they play him 3 times, I'm just going to spin around a few times before I run fab, hit a random number, and run away from the computer.
Yes. That describes my process sometimes.
Fab on the donkey.
I was combing around trying to do some prefab work myself, and just circled a name, Otto Lopez in Miami. This is definitely a 15 team versus a 12 team situation, because he doesn't have a history of power, of great power, and his batted ball stats aren't that great, but he did hit a ball 110.7 last year in AAA. So there may be a little bit more oomph in there. It's 108.8 this year for Otto Lopez in terms of max. But both of those numbers are non-zero. So I'm thinking he can have, at least like 120 ISO, Lopez, and he runs and he plays. So that can be just enough for streaming purposes, and maybe you were playing bets at shortstop or second base. And so Otto Lopez is kind of, I would say, a sort of an emergency replacement that could give you a little bit of power and a little bit of speed. I don't think the schedule lines up amazingly this week, but he could be one of those midweek replacements where, you don't buy. If you're looking, sometimes you look at full week projections for a player, and you forget that you can actually change players, hitters in NFC formats midweek. And so sometimes it's irrelevant what he's going to do the whole week if you just want to put him in for next weekend. So I think that this type of player is useful to have on your roster in head-to-head leagues. You just put him in to maybe like snatch a steal, for extra at-bats when the other team's not playing. So he's a kind of a near replacement, but interesting versatility player that you can have on your roster.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at Lopez, similar to Schneeman in some ways in terms of expectations, a little different in terms of immediate eligibility where you can play them, but lots of opportunity. I think he started 8 of the last 9 games for the Marlins, really has pushed Vidal Brujan to the side. On the pitching side, I saw Tobias Myers is the most added player on CBS. Again, first come, first serve. Are they doing it again? Are the Brewers getting away with this? I think it was Matt Thompson in our Discord or on Twitter at one point, like a month or even 6 weeks ago, before this recent stretch where Tobias Myers has pitched well. He just put it out there. He's like, the Brewers are going to get away with it again with Tobias Myers, aren't they? And they've been getting away with it yet again with Tobias Myers, a 3.26 ERA, 113 WHIP, 42 Ks, and 47 innings for a guy that's bounced around through a lot of organizations. At one point, Orioles, Rays, White Sox, Guardians, Giants. It's his 6th organization, but the first giving him a chance in the big leagues. Yeah,
I think what's wild is that he doesn't have a single pitch that rates above a 94.
God, I love this.
By Stuff Plus.
This is so good. I'm not rooting against you. I'd like chaos, especially when chaos works in my favor.
Yeah. What I would say is that a 94 WRC plus, 94 Stuff Plus on the 4-seam or 93 is actually pretty close to league average. It's only a couple ticks under, and maybe for starters, maybe like right around league average. And that might explain why he throws it 41% of the time. It's a 92.6 mile an hour fastball for Tobias Myers, but it obviously has good shape. And so I don't know. And then beyond that, he has a pretty equal mix of 4 other pitches. So there's a little bit of the kitchen sink approach here. And then kitchen sink with good command, I guess. This is a Lodum situation. Lodum is model spelled backwards incorrectly. In that there's no number that says he's good.
Perfect. That's exactly what I want. And here's the other.
PB's not good. Sierra's not good. FIP's not good.
Here's my other tidbit for everybody. Like the thing that continues to help a team like Milwaukee get more mileage out of pitchers like Tobias Myers, like Colin Ray, like Wade Miley when he was healthy, it is their defense. Look at the rolling 1-year leaderboard for BABIP allowed. right? They're second behind the Dodgers. The Brewers defense turns more balls into outs. It's not an accident. And I think it's not just the defense necessarily. Some of it could be the game calling or the pitch mixes or the pitch shapes, sequencing. There's something. I don't think this is an accident. I don't think this is completely fluky. I don't think this is a thing that you can look at and say, that can't continue. Because you look at multi-year trends on this and you do see a lot of the same teams doing really well in that particular area. So if you're going to be anti-model, I think you can more selectively pick spots where it's a good idea to try it, because there's a few things working in your favor that might not be there for other organizations. Flip side, the Rockies, not surprisingly, 323 BABIP that's not all year. It's the park, right? It's not just them. But the Giants, we've talked about the limitations of that team defensively and the dimensions of their home ballpark, how that would create more on balls in play. The Nationals, the Cardinals, the A's, the White Sox, the
Cardinals
Marlins
are kind of aging, and they're not a progressive data organization necessarily.
Right. And the Brewers are a team that have 4 or 5 center fielders on the roster, it feels like, all the time. The only outfielder they have that's not really a center fielder most of the time is Christian Yelich. Everybody else they could put in center field.
Outfield shifts were more effective than infield shifts in taking hits away over the recent history. So they could be outfield shifting more aggressively than some teams, or more precisely than other teams, with center fielders and Tobias Myers 43% fly ball rate. Always been a fly ball pitcher. Might just play into his strengths as well.
I'm just turning into something I never thought I'd be. Someone who's into Tobias Myers and Andrew Abbott, and like, fine, you got none of you like these pitchers. Fine, I'm just gonna keep. I will use the outliers until they burn me, and I'm sure someday it'll burn me. But until other people care, I'm in. The other guy that I thought was kind of interesting might be Landon Knack, just because Walker Buehler went on the IL with some hip discomfort. Apparently, the hip was bothering him. Then he got hit by a comebacker in the hip on Tuesday, which is just. That's just lovely.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? This is already bothering me, and now I got hit, so it's going to make it worse. But Buehler was also struggling in his first stretch back, from the second Tommy John, a 5.84 ERA, 151 whip. You wrote about Landon Knack, I think it was maybe last week now, just as someone that did some interesting things while he was up, stands out a bit in the model, and just based on need could get the opportunity. Maybe this Buehler injury opens that door back up for Knack.
Yeah, it's a really strong fastball slider combination. Even though it's only 92.8 on the fastball, it rates highly, and so it's good movement profile. It's a good 2-pitch foundation, and then what he's doing more in the major leagues is throwing the curve and changeup more, and making himself into a true 4-pitch pitcher. That means his range is from 79 on the curveball to 93 on the fastball. And so I think he's just kind of dancing around different velo ranges with pretty good demonstrated command. I don't know that he'll have great strikeout rates, because in the minors, he kind of flipped around from like 26, even had a 20% at AAA in 2023. Landon Knack did, but I generally just think he's probably a good matchups pitcher and somebody I want around.
Yep. And the team context certainly helps. I mean, there's no shame in taking a chance on anybody the Dodgers are leaning on. We'll see if they end up bringing him back in. Yeah, the win probability's there. The usage ends up being right. I think that's the other part of the Tobias Myers, Colin Ray thing too, is that they're not going to overexpose guys. If the situation is right, if they're pitching well, sure, they can pitch deep into a game. If it's not, they go to the bullpen. They don't let those guys stay out there and just wear it, because they like their 4th, 5th, 6th reliever enough to go ahead and make those changes. So that's the state of things. The early weekend waiver preview. Hopefully some of those names help you. I really want to see Jake Bloss, though. I just want to see what the stuff really looks like against big league hitters. We'll get a chance to see that on Friday night. We are on our way out the door. Just a reminder as we go.
Excited for Rickwood today, too.
Real excited for Rickwood.
Fun game.
It's kind of a standalone game. There's one late game, Brewers Padres, that starts kind of at the end of that, but it's got its own nice window. Really looking forward to watching that game, seeing that ballpark, and taking in a bit of history from afar as we watch that game between the Cardinals and Giants on Thursday night. Be sure to get a subscription to The Athletic, theathletic.com/rates and barrels. lots of good stuff to read there. You can find
Big piece
Eno on
with
Twitter.
Jason Stark tomorrow.
It's tomorrow?
Yep.
Awesome. Be sure to check that out, as well as the great coverage of Willie Mays' life. A lot of great tributes on the site and everywhere else, too. I've seen amazing stuff all over the place in the last day or so. You can find Eno on Twitter at Eno Saris. Find me at Derek Van Riper. Find the pod at Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Friday, live, 1 o'clock Eastern on our YouTube channel with Trevor May.
Thanks for listening.